You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible.
Food deserts are areas in which residents are hard-pressed to find affordable, healthy food. Those are most often found in poor, urban neighborhoods across the United States, all those pretty words for black. With few supermarkets or farmers markets, it's easier to find a Slurpee than a smoothie, and cheaper to get the Big Mac than to grab dinner at the salad bar. Well, the Black Church Food Security Network is an association of congregations, farmers, food advocates, and community activists working together to create an alternative food system in the Baltimore metropolitan area and beyond. Joining me now to talk about that is Pastor Heber Brown III, the organization's founder, and I'm grateful to say, my pastor. Pastor Brown, thank you so much for joining us here on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thanks for the opportunity.
So, for folks who are unfamiliar, tell us what the Black Church Food Security Network is.
Certainly, yeah. It's an effort to organize the vast resources that Black churches own and connect them with Black farmers and Black communities to create our own community-controlled food system, because we recognize that we cannot have really control over our health as a community until we have power over our plate as a community. And so we're excited to be doing this work.
You also bring in the black farmers there. We remember, those of us who cover politics, remember that some time ago that black farmers were needing a settlement from the United States government for all the years of racial discrimination, and yet it just the can got kicked down the road. How vital is it to you all to be doing business directly with the black farmers themselves?
It's critically important. I talk to farmers all the time, many of them who are right there on the edge of giving up farming because they just cannot support themselves or their families. But what the Black Church Food Security Network now is able to do is not only buy our produce and products from them, but we're able to give them a lifeline, because we need the next generations of their families to also grow food, feed our communities, and they need our support to be able to do that. We're glad to be in that position.
In a prior segment, we were looking at Roland in Ghana, and one of the folks he had with him talked about the cultural continuity of some of the activities she saw in Ghana and things that are happening here in the United States. Here locally, though, we know black folks have been farming in the United States, and quite honestly, involuntary in many times, for a very long time. So what are you learning about the black experience of farmers from the folks that you are working with?
Well, I'm learning that farmers are some of the most courageous, genius, intelligent, and brave people that I've ever met. And really, you know, having a doctor of ministry degree, going through the school, going to classrooms, certainly honor academia. But we would be remiss if we did not also honor the ways in which our farmers are doing amazing work under tremendous hardship to keep their families supported, to keep their farms afloat, and to support our communities. And you're right, Ray, many of us, myself included, grew up with grandmothers who got string beans in the backyard and pop-pops who were growing something on the side yard there. It's a part of our story. And so we're grateful to be in a position to help amplify that, because I recognize, and we recognize in our organization, that nobody's coming to save us when it comes to providing nutrient-rich food to our community. We have to take the lead and take responsibility to feed our own community. And thankfully, through the Black Church, we have the assets to really gain momentum in that department.
Well, Pastor Brown, what do you say to those viewers or listeners who think to themselves, I like what it is you're doing, but I'm not one particularly for church? How do you incorporate those other members of the community into what it is you're doing?
Certainly. You don't have to be for church to be for sweet potatoes, collard greens, broccoli, kale, and herbs. I mean, the reality is this, that food is a great equalizer. The reason why I love doing this work and helping churches to start gardens on their land, helping churches to host many farmers markets inside of their facilities, is because food does not have the same doctrinal debates. It doesn't call forward our tendency to try to put stakes down in our theological claims and argue that we're right about the divine. No, food recognizes, or we recognize in food rather, that we all need it. And so we might as well, particularly as Black people, work together to feed our own communities. I'm grateful to work with Muslim communities, Christian communities, those who don't claim any religion at all, because the reality is it's something we all need. And here's another reality, Ray. Collectively, the largest landowner in Black America are Black churches. And so I don't go to people and try to convert them to the faith. I try to get them to see from a socio-political standpoint, land, money, buildings, church vans, and people are all under the umbrella of our Black churches, no matter the denomination. And it makes sense for us to organize through these spaces for our collective need.
The Black church, Pastor Brown, has long been a source of activism for Black folks, but there's been some criticism of the Black church in recent years that it's not doing that. How do you push back to those who say, well, Pastor Brown, your job is to preach and leave the socio-political stuff to other folks?
Sure. Yeah, I would say that from the very beginning, from the earliest African-American Christian denominations in this country, the African Methodist Episcopal Church and many Baptist churches, pastors and religious leaders in our community did not have the luxury to ignore the pressing needs of our congregants. From the very beginning, we were birthed out of a context where we had to speak to the social issues, the economic issues, and the political challenges that we faced as a community. And so other communities might have that luxury just to think about Sunday morning and when I die, where I'm going to go. But as a Black pastor who is faithful to the tradition, or striving to be faithful to the tradition of people like Reverend Vernon Johns, Reverend Albert Clegg, Reverend Minister Nat Turner, and so many others, I have to be committed to serving the holistic needs of the people that I'm blessed to share life with.
We're going to bring in Derrick Holley to the conversation. Derrick, you have something for the pastor?
Yeah, Pastor Brown, first of all, go Ravens. But I wanted to ask you, a lot of times we look at what's going on in the Black community as being systemic, and food deserts is one of those things. Have you had any success in terms of getting some of these mega churches on board with what you're doing, since they kind of have such a bigger audience that we can feed into and hopefully, obviously, feed them as well?
Yeah, I think, our greatest traction has been with the average size churches, and most churches in the country are about 200 or so members. And so with that size church, they recognize that if we don't collaborate, work together, and create a systemic response to the issue of food apartheid in our communities, then they're not going to get very far. What I'm pleased to report, though, is the phone is beginning to ring, and on the other line are those churches that some would define as mega churches, who are saying, Pastor Brown, I want to join the Black Church Food Security Network. My church has 200 acres, 100 acres, et cetera, and we want to be a part. I'm also grateful to report that the African Methodist Episcopal Church and other denominations are coming to the table for conversation about how they can bring their vast assets and resources and inventory to the table. Again, because they recognize whether you're a mega church or whether you're a storefront, the people in your pews are struggling or impacted in different ways by food apartheid, and we got to work together.
Dr. Cleo Manago has a word for you as well. Dr. Manago?
Greetings, Pastor. It's good to meet you, and frankly, very refreshing to meet you. I haven't done any formal research on the attitude and behavior of ministers, but from what I've observed, you seem to be quite exceptional, particularly with your willingness to be Black about what you're doing and embrace Black people. I say that I did a training that I conducted in Los Angeles recently, where there was a Black woman there who was a Black Christian, who said at the end of the training that she finally felt good about caring about Black people in particular, because she was trained that I was racist in her faith to care about Black people in particular. She has to care about everybody because that's what Jesus said. So we should care about everybody, but Black people need to care about Black people. We need all the hair we can get. Thank you for that, for being that kind of light. I'm really impressed also with this Black farmer church community. Do something about the desert project that you have. It's like a marriage made in, for lack of a better word, heaven. To help these farmers actually get their wares out and sell their food and bring nutrition to Black folks from Black hands and take care of this desert problem that we have in our communities, particularly in Baltimore. So it's very impressive, and I'm glad to meet you. I hope to see you in person.
Well, likewise, I'm grateful for the kind words, and I must say, I wish I was as exceptional as I may seem. The reality is, though, I am one of many. There's a large congregation and rather a large organization of unapologetically Black and unashamedly Christian pastors around this country. The problem is we don't often get invited to television for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
We're not
makes sense.
front and center, but
I mean, it don't make
everybody
sense,
from the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference, everybody from Dr. Jeremiah Wright, Dr. Freddie Haynes, so many like Reverend Dr. Valerie Bridgman. I mean, it's a large community. Dr. Earl Fisher in Memphis. So we always been here. We never left. The tradition of pastors who are following in the path of people like Nat Turner and Gabriel Prosser, Henry Highland Garnett, and so many more. We've been here the whole time, and I'm grateful that through this program and many others, people are starting to see that the Black pastors who ascribe to that Western European perverted form of Christianity, those who have stolen the way of Jesus, Yeshua, and made it a handmaiden to white supremacy, that's not the only way to follow Jesus. In fact, that's not the best way. It's not the accurate or authentic way. So I'm grateful to be a part of a community of people who are trying to shed light on that.
No wonder he's your pastor. Anyway, I'm glad you mentioned that there are others. And I'm glad you put it in context that the press doesn't give a lot of favor to pro-Black people and ministers in this instance. Like we know how Reverend Jeremiah Wright was treated by someone who wanted to make sure that Black people got in the White House. Anyway, that's another story.
Yes,
but
sir.
I think it's important, again, that you actually made me clear, again, that there are others like you, because I need to know that.
I would also add that a lot of Blacks are not familiar with the term food desert. And so,
Even if they're in the desert.
even if they're in the
They
desert,
don't know it's a
they
desert.
don't know. They've never heard that term, food desert. So, if there's a way, Pastor, that I can assist with you and just getting the word out with just about food deserts, maybe we could pen an op-ed or article, something like that. They could run in a Black publication that talks about food deserts and the network. That would be something helpful, and I'd be willing to do that.
Pastor Brown, I do want to ask this question. Folks are hearing that you're from Baltimore and you have the O's hat on and all of this about Baltimore, but the Black Church Food Security Network expands beyond. Would you let the listeners and viewers know more about the work that you guys have done outside of Baltimore and the reach that it could potentially have should you get more partners?
Absolutely. So yes, thank you. It started in Baltimore in the midst of the Baltimore uprising, 2015, in the aftermath of the murder of Freddie Gray. And after his death, the city goes up, there's protests, there's demonstrations everywhere. And some of the communities that were near the epicenter of the protest, their corner stores were shut down, public transportation was stopped, a curfew was placed on these communities, and the phone at the church started ringing because people knew that Pastor Brown and Pleasant Hope Baptist Church grows food. And once they started calling us for food, I was able to connect with some farmers I knew. The farmers brought food into the city, and then we piled it up on our church bus, and I drove it around Baltimore and got food to our community. After a couple of weeks of doing that, we realized that we had a systemic response to the issue of food insecurity in our community. Since that time, though, I've gotten calls from pastors in Ohio, North Carolina, Virginia. We're spreading out well beyond now. We have partners as far south as Georgia and Tennessee, as far north as Ohio, as I stated. The calls keep on coming, the emails keep on coming. And listen, I'm not trying to fly into any city or any other pastor's congregation and be a Superman. But I am trying to help us think about how we can reimagine what we already own, that not only will bring vitality to or bring a renewed sense of spirit to your congregation, but also would bless your community as well by providing something that we all need. And so check us out on blackchurchfoodsecurity.net to connect with us. I would love to be an extension of your staff, Pastor, and a partner in your community to meet a need that I know is resident in your congregation.
Pastor Brown, before we get out of here, I do want to bring in Dr. Avis Weaver to offer her thoughts or questions that she may have to you regarding the Black Church Food Security Network. Dr. Weaver, go right ahead.
Yes, I just want to say this is amazing. And it's funny because this show is like echoing my life in so many ways. I'm a descendant of farmers. My grandfather was a farmer. And though my father had a different business, we also raised all sorts of fruits and vegetables on our land. I remember picking corn and string beans and watermelon and all of that we grew and essentially in our backyard. in addition to raising tobacco and selling tobacco as a side business as a child. So, this resonates with me on so many levels, but it also resonates with me when I think about the fact that you are addressing the very important issue of food deserts in our communities, where oftentimes we pay so much more for food that's so much less healthy than foods that's available in other communities. And I think about the implications of what you're doing in terms of improving the health of Black people, as well as the economic strength of our community by supporting Black farmers. So could you talk a little bit about what you see as the long-term effect of this win-win situation that you have created through this network?
Doc, you just made my heart do a backflip in my chest, because the big vision and picture of is this. Once we prove to ourselves that we have what we need already in our hand to take care of a basic need, then that spirit gets contagious. And the questions start to rise up and say, well, if we can feed ourselves, what else can we do? And it puts us in a power position to negotiate with other communities, not from the kiddie table, but eye to eye, because now we have created economy for our community. Now we have improved our health. Now our children don't have to beg for jobs for other people, but we can employ them ourselves, because the food system, as you know, Doc, is so expansive that we don't need everybody in overalls farming out in the field. We do need journalists in our agricultural projects. We need scientists. We do need food safety inspectors. We need those in marketing. And so it's really a great universe that I pray that we seriously look at. And let me just say one last word. I'd be remiss if I did not uplift the work of a wonderful organization called Black Urban Growers. And Karen Washington, who's one of the founders of Black Urban Growers. She pushed us recently, me in particular, with the term food desert, because she said that term gets lobbed into our community from the outside, and it's a deficiency model that doesn't allow us to look at what we have in our hands. So she chooses the term food apartheid to really recognize that it's not just distance to the grocery store that's the issue, but it's also the history and legacy of redlining that is still alive and well in our communities. It's economics, it's gender, go on down the line. And so that term really stretches us to see, wait a minute, this is an intentional construct to oppress us. So that means we need to create a systemic response to free ourselves from it. And I'm grateful to be a part of that picture.
Pastor.
Before we let you get out of here, Pastor Brown, one of the things that you just touched on, which I think is vital, that folks might not even know how this works, is how the actual food that is grown gets to the worshipers and the people of the community that you seek to serve. So if I'm understanding correctly, that you all realize that you have your members already at church, so what better place to provide produce for them than at the church? Tell the viewers how that comes.
Yeah, breaking it down, thank you so much. After church, everybody know we hungry after church. You're gonna go eat somewhere. And the reality is we take our dollars and we go put it in stores and places that are not committed and are not advancing the interests of our community. And so how this plays out, for example, at my church, right after the benediction, I have the farmers and the vendors lined up in my multi-purpose room, and every Black church got a multi-purpose room. Right after the benediction, the congregation comes out, they go into the multi-purpose room, they buy directly from farmers, they shake the farmer's hand, they can ask questions about how it was grown. They also support other food-related businesses, but it all happens right there on Sunday, so that people have that opportunity to support right there, right after worship. And our seniors love it, because they get the chance to get their produce right there at the church and go home without making extra stops. And so finally, let me say real quick, also to make this happen, it means I drive south and I go and I visit Black farmers at their farms. I pick up produce from them. And I say that because I think it's important for any pastor watching me, that if you're looking for like a microwave solution to our systemic oppression regarding food apartheid, then you're gonna be holding your breath a long time. We gotta be willing to reimagine how we show up as pastors and what it means to be in ministry. It has to go far beyond the pulpit on Sunday. And I invite you to join me in reimagining and praying about what the image of a pastor needs to look like for the sake of our people today and in the future.
Pastor, this is a digital platform, so if folks want to find and follow what it is that your organization is doing digitally, please let them know where they can do that beyond the website.
Absolutely. So you can find us on Twitter and Instagram, Black Church FSN, as in Food Security Network. Black Church FSN. And you can find me also on Twitter and Instagram, Heber Brown, Heber, last name Brown, spelled like the color. I'd love to connect with you, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Pastor Brown, thank you so much for joining us here on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, as the marijuana momentum continues, our folks at marijuanastock.org have already reached more than half of their funding goal for the hemp CBD investment. So if you want to take advantage, you better get in now. Of course, hemp is a cousin to marijuana with a much higher concentration of CBD, which means hemp gives you all the medical benefits of marijuana, but it won't get you high. Scott is sad. Now, folks, if you don't know, hemp farming is now legal in the U.S., creating one of the largest commodities worldwide. It's an investment opportunity for you and the full folks at 420 Real Estate have a simple business model. They buy land that supports hemp CBD grow operations and lease it to licensed high-paying tenants, people like Chris. They are hemp CBD landlords, and you can get in on the action. Now, all you got to do is invest as little as $200. Monique, you got that. In their crowdfunding campaign, up to $10,000. Amisha, some of that Sinclair money. To invest, go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org. Get in the game and get in the game now. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.